Hello World Civilization 107 class. This is the last week before the final. Everything happened that quickly. So here are some things you need to remember. In regards to late work, the official policy that I've had set up is that if you turn in late work without getting permission from me, I am automatically rejected and give it a 0. Listen to me again. This has been the official policy. If you have not written to me or talked to me on the phone and asked for permission for late work and you turn it in, I will not look at it. It's automatically rejected and there's no discussion. Now, there's some of you that did that, and I just felt like giving you the credit because I had the time. But here's the thing. I have to manage what I can do. And for those, there's been many students that have been communicating with me about their issues and that I've allowed them to turn in late work. Now, I can budget my time so that I can get everybody's work graded on time and the finals coming up and get your grades in on time. But I can't do that if I have randomly several different students try to make up 6 weeks worth of work. So what you need to realize right now is this. If we've had any communication about late work, this is the last week that you have, because I have no more time. By the way, I'm sitting outside on a porch, and so you'll hear some other voices. The neighbors are talking pretty loud. Maybe I'm loud too. Anyways, so the thing is you're going to need to have everything turned in by the Sunday before the final. Okay, that's fundamental. Extra credit cannot be turned in as late work. That was extra credit. So if you're going to make up work that you had issues with, you got to turn in the work that we did in the past that was required. Okay. So also keep in mind that the final is only going to be, it's the same amount of points as basically an exam. My whole class does not put weight on exams or quizzes. Getting the grade that you wanted in this class was about participating and doing everything each week in the class. Okay. So remember that. And so I want to make sure that you're more focused on looking at what you accomplished so far as opposed to putting all of your worries about what's the final going to be. Because if you are fine right now, you are most likely going to be fine. If you have not been turning in your work and you're not doing the right things and you think that putting all your work into the final is going to fix it, that's not going to happen either. Okay? So this is also a time for you to communicate with me about any kind of issues or questions you'd have about grades. I'm doing my last day of work up here in Portland tomorrow, and then I'm going to be up in other parts of the Pacific Northwest, and then I'll finally be back in Modesto. But I go out of my way to make sure I get a hold of you when you are contacting me. And if I haven't contacted you within 48 hours, communicate with me again, just in case I missed you, okay? The best way to get a hold of me, though, is to text under the appropriate hours or write on Canvas anytime you want, because that's not going to wake me up or be in a weird hour. I'll just get to it when I can on the Canvas, okay? So having said that, there's just a few things I just want to finish saying about the content of how we're ending this semester. And I'll try to keep it brief, and again, there might be some noise distractions. But look, I touched on the issue of communism, and I had that interview with my friend and former neighbor, Kyle. Look, there's a lot that I have left out that when it comes to the information, because we had so much information to cover. I focused on why do you think, certain people in different parts of the world would embrace communism. I did not go into the details, which you will often hear in most other classes, how many people died under Stalin and Mao, the famines, those kind of problems. I will tell you this, I was in Cambodia for a few months. I rented an apartment, and the Khmer Rouge, they had lived under a communist regime, which I think is one of the worst regimes of the 20th century. It was supported by China. It was also supported by the United States because it was at odds with the Vietnamese communists. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I know that some of you might be saying, well, what is the angle that Mr. Pollock is trying to get at? What I'm trying to show you is that these topics require us to have more nuance and understanding of context. So what I really wanted to do is, I know a lot of classes, and I know this because I've been in school as well. They will focus on whether something produced something good or bad. And in the case of Kyle, he's saying, oh, China has produced something good. That's his argument. But what I wanted you to really focus on is often the way you hear communism presented, it's like there's never a context put into why these countries, had leaders or people that would go to that direction. One of the things that I may have put in some of the lectures that I want you to think about, the majority of countries, not all, but the majority of countries that were embracing communism were under Western colonialism. I would call it totalitarian colonialism because it's totalitarian in that. I mean, think about it. In the United States, we have a war of independence angered about taxation without representation. The treatment that the British had on the colonists here was far less oppressive than, let's say, what the French were doing to the Vietnamese people, or the advantages that the British would take over, let's say, how the British treated people in Kenya. So I can go on a long list of this. I just want you to rethink the way that you've been thinking about some of these topics, or if you put the time into it, or if you're new to these topics, I wanted to put a different twist on something so that as you look at these standard narratives about these topics, you'll have maybe a little more of a critical lens to kind of take a little different angle with what you're seeing. And lastly, I'm ending on the Israel-Palestine conflict, and I'm dealing with the Middle East, and it couldn't be more important to understand right now because there has been a terrible escalation of the war between Israel and the people of Gaza and the West Bank, and this battle with Hamas and the Israeli state, and then now the Houthis of Yemen have got involved. Hezbollah in Lebanon are involved, and the United States is the most involved. And the United States is really perpetuating much of what's going on by giving an extreme amount of military weapons to Israel. Now, if you've gone this far to listen to me, I just need to say something. I've tried to be nuanced on some of these topics, and it's been a challenge right now because I really do feel that there is a genocide taking place against the Palestinian people by the state of Israel with the support of the United States government. And I'm going to say this as your professor, and I realize that this is not a neutral statement, in the same way that I feel that if I was a professor during World War II, and I was seeing what's happening to the Japanese in internment in the United States, or to Jews and others in Nazi Germany, or to any other group in a different place, that sometimes just being neutral and taking a kind of got to listen to both sides kind of thing is not going to work for me. Okay, like, I'm against people being racist against anybody. My mentor on the Israel-Palestine conflict is a Jewish man who saw a lot of things happen while he grew up in the South, where it was heavily influenced by the Ku Klux Klan. That was something that would be threatening to him as a Jewish person, but he also saw segregation and what was happening to black people by the majority of whites. And as a Jewish man, he went to the West Bank and parts of Israel and other parts of Palestine to see what happened, and he saw things that really upset him. And he educated me. He's the first person decades ago on the problems of the Israel-Palestine conflict in regards to the way that the Israeli state views the Palestinian people. And right now, things have escalated from that. Now, there was a terrible attack that attacked civilians in a bad way, which everybody would call terrorism as well, on October 7th. and the last October, and that initiated a response from the Israeli state, and they've been carpet bombing and destroying buildings and assassinating in Gaza the entire time, and also cutting off food and water supplies. This is all documented. I can stand by this. I understand that there's some people trying to argue differently, but I know for a fact that when it comes to the weight of history, Israeli human rights groups and so many others have documented this. And you can watch this on your phone. Many people are watching what Israel's doing to Gaza on their phone. Okay? And it's horrific. Now, I don't cover October 7th or the genocide. And some could say alleged genocide. Well, okay, there's some people saying that there's things alleged about October 7th. The fact of the matter is we have this attack from Hamas on civilians and military targets on October 7th, and then the Israeli response. And we're still in it, and now Israel and their neighbors are escalating, and this is potentially blowing up into a full-on Middle East war. And Israel keeps telling Netanyahu in Israel to pull back, and he keeps not listening. Or do they have some back, or is there some other dialogue going on behind closed doors? Well, anyhow, having said that, I don't cover this in this section, because what I wanted you to do is I wanted you to understand the context of the Israel-Palestine conflict from a very well-documented way, because there's so little neutrality that is being covered right now especially on what's happened between this war with Hamas and Israel and the Palestinian people right now, that I wanted to give you some empirical data, primary sources coming out of early founders of Israel, human rights organizations from within Israel, and just Palestinian perspectives, the history, going into where we're at now. So what I'm hoping is that this information will help you have a better understanding of how to tackle what we're seeing take place as we are in real time, okay? And so again, I am just being clear. I'm unequivocally supportive of the Palestinian people and being ethnically cleansed over not just since October 7th, but for, since the 19th century project of creating Israel started. And this does not mean that I want Jews expelled necessarily. Like when I say necessarily, the settlements there's some that are taking people's land and going in by force. Those characters, I guess what I'm just trying to say is that to me, the issue isn't the problem of whether there is Jews there versus Arabs. The problem is the power imbalance. The problem is people taking land from people that's not theirs by gunpoint. Okay? So I can't tell you what I think the peace process should be, but I don't want anybody's kids to die. I don't want to see any kind of terrorism. I have many Jewish friends. I have many Palestinian friends. I have friends that are Muslim, Christian, atheist, all the variables, okay? And so I want to see a solution, but I have to call a spade, and I have to say that the U.S. is at fault for escalating this, and that's my position. But while that's my position, I'm also saying this is not a critique of anybody's ethnicity, of anybody's essence. This is not about that. It's about history unfolding in a certain way. And when it happens, we all have to make principled stands, don't we? Okay? All right? That is not what we always learn, like never again. Never again means we're not supposed to allow people to do a Holocaust, right? We're not supposed to allow people to hurt other people using the state to do this systematically and all that stuff. So, look, I can't say everything I want to say right here. It's already going into a long announcement, and there's already a lot of things that I know that people might want to jump on. Maybe I need to rephrase certain things, but I think right now I'm just going to leave it at that, as is. And if you really want to have this conversation with me, I'm very open to have it with you, regardless of your position. You do not get a grade in my class based on agreeing with me. Okay, so I want to remind you of that. All right, so everybody take care of yourselves, be well, and good luck with this last finishing up of the semester.